Okay, then I'll do it.
Oh, I can do it if you want. My thing was muted or
Sure, I'd be happy if you do it.
okay. I've done it in a while. So the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dang warje pe dra no parje pe ge. Tarpa dang tam she kin pe ba dujo parje pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam ka dang nyam pe sim chin tam she de wa dang den. Du now dang drill nor du la na mai pa yang dang par zog pe shang shu rim po she to par ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du song me ge ba ma ge ba du lu nang yi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she ba du lu nang yi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma song ta sam gi ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Dren sen sa wa dangu par je pe pa den la madam pa nam la kyab su chi o. Yidam kil korgi la so nam la kyab su chi o. Sangye chom den de nam la kyab su chi o. Dam pe cho nam la kyab su chi o. Pa pe ye du nam la kyab su chi o. Pa wo ka dro cho kyung song me song yeshe yi chen dang den pa nam la kyab su chi o. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to Bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to Bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shang Shu Ning Por Ji Ki Bar Sangye Namla Kyabsu Chi Chodang Shangshub Senpai Soglang Deshin Kyabsu Chi Jitar Nongi Deshe Ki Zhangshub Tugni Ke Padang Shangshub Sempe La Pala De Dang Rimshin Ne Patar De Shindro La Pendon Dung Shangshub Senni Ke Gizing De Shindu Ni La Pala Rimpa Shindu La Pargio. The short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Ma nam ka dang yam pe sem chin tam she de wa dang de we gudan den pa jor chi. Du now dang du now gi gudan dra wa jor chi. Dung now me pe de wa dang mi dra war jor cheek. Ne ring chak dang ni dang draw way tag nyom la ne par jor cheek. I just realized I did the 4 measurables for the I have the thing in front of me. Let me go with that again. I'm sorry, yo. Sang ye cho dang so ki chok nam la. Jiangsu Bardu Dagni Kyabsuchi Dagi Jinso Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sange Drupar Shok. Sorry about that. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Should I give it another go with the thing or okay? Manam kadang nyampe sem chen tam she de wa dang de wa gudang den par jor chi dug now dang du now gi gudang draw war jor chi dug now me pe de wa dang mi draw war jor chi. Ne ring chak dang ni dang draw way tang nam la ne par jor chi. Go with the Vajrasattva as well. 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me, be loving towards me, grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind, heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you, lest I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Deno Patishta Drido Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Susami Sitan Shriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tata Gata Bhajra Mame Munsa Bhaji Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopadista Drido Mi Bhava Sutokayo Mi Bhava Supokayo Mi Bhava Anurakto Mi Bhava Sarva Siddhi Mi Prayatsa Sarva Karma Susami Sitan Shriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopatishta Drido Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Susami Sitan Shriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Munsa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva. Sagaramati requested sutra. Likewise be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food and drink, peacefully enjoy it, and be satisfied, so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated.
Hey Matt, I just wanted to say I hadn't heard you recite in a while. Just as a point of observation, you're you're fluent now. It's beautiful. It was inspiring for me.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've been trying to. I'm not quite there yet. I forget the melodies to it. I always forget. I'm trying to learn how to do the Tibetan. So thanks, sir.
Yeah, I'm inspired to work on do some private self-study.
Very good. Thank you. Yes. Good job. Now remember that the on our website is are the lamas reciting the melodies. So if you want to get familiar with the melodies, that's really the best source to be able to do that. Okay. So tonight we're continuing our conversation about on the jewel ornament liberation. And does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about thus far? Last week we were talking about refuge. So does anybody have any thoughts about that? Okay, very good. So then tonight we're on chapter 9, which is the antidote to not knowing the method of practice for achieving Buddhahood, in particular, the method, the cultivation of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is really, I think, the most important aspect of what it is to be a wholly enlightened being. Because within the heart center of all enlightened beings is the awareness and the method, the practice of bodhicitta. So this has the four qualities about it, the four vast immeasurable qualities: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So this is something that if you're going to be studying something, this is one of the things that is very, very, very important to really memorize and to become the embodiment of. We do the memorization in order and going through it over and over again and learning, remembering the meanings of everything. And then slowly, it begins to like open up windows, open up doors for us. We begin to see what this is and that we have this within ourselves and what a difference this makes as we are practicing, as we are doing, as we are actualizing bodhicitta in everything that we do. So I imagine, and I know that we've asked, everybody at one time or another how bodhicitta has changed your life and so on, and everybody says, "Oh yes, it's made good difference and everything," and I see that, and I I hope that it continues to do that with you. It is the kind of thing that we have to keep working at. It's not something that we can do once, twice, or three times, or four times for a month or 6 months or a year or something like that, and then decide, well, I've done it, I'm good, I can, I'm there, I don't need to practice it anymore. And what happens is, because it's so subtle, it begins to become overpowered by the kleshas. The kleshas are the negative effects of the karma. So it's very easy for that to fall backwards, for us to be able to get blocked up and not recognize the bodhicitta, not practice the bodhicitta. So my point is, we got to do it all the time. We have to practice it all the time. We have to be mindful of it all the time. So as we've said before, this is a lifestyle, and we have to work at the lifestyle. So, and it's priceless, and it's very simple. If we wanted to be millionaires and have, wonderful homes and have wonderful cars and wonderful clothes and surrounded by wonderful people and do all the things that very wealthy people do, you got to work at that. Otherwise it's going to exhaust itself. You're going to deplete your bank account. If you don't have the ability to keep generating that money, you find that, society has a way of sucking all that money away from you. Well, the same thing is true with bodhicitta and with all the Dharma teachings and practices that we have. You have to keep working at it to keep it strong. If you don't, things begin to overcome it. And we start making decisions based on, well, I need to do this, I need to do that, and this is the most simple thing to do, the most powerful thing to do. And if you look at it, that this is why we have this life, why were we born? Why do we have this life? If we look at it, that is for the benefit of other beings. And to benefit other beings is through bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So this particular chapter really illustrates a lot of those points, really gives us some references on which to reflect over and over again. So some of these things we've been doing, and maybe you haven't recognized them. So I'm going to turn right now to page 16 in the outline book that we have. And I just want to bring your attention to these three lineages: the wisdom lineage, the method lineage, and the realization lineage. This gives you a context of what it is that we're doing. So this wisdom lineage is the aspiration lineage. If you look in this little segment here, if you look in this little box here, you can see that it says the profound view lineage, the aspiration lineage, holding the view. So what we have been doing on Sundays these past few weeks has been the king of aspiration prayers. So there's many, 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 many aspiration prayers. You can write your own aspiration prayer. But the king of all those prayers, the one that is the most concise, the one that is the most comprehensive, the one that has all the elements that we need in there in a very understandable, organized way, is the king of aspiration prayers. And this is why we recite it, because it is so good. This was taught to us, this was given to us by the Bodhisattva, Samantabhadra. And if you remember, Samantabhadra is the Bodhisattva of devotion, the devotion to the Dharma, the devotion to being of benefit for all sentient beings, for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. So who better to give us this prayer than Samantabhadra? So by reciting this regularly, I invited you to recite it every day. If you can't recite it every day, maybe every other day, or or every couple days or once a week or something, but something to begin to light the spark that ignites your bodhicitta and stabilizes it within you. This aspiration for bodhicitta, this aspiration to be of benefit to other beings. This is what we are trying to do. By doing that, we help ourselves. So these are the two accumulations, we might say, or the two attainments that we attain enlightenment for the benefit of others, we attain enlightenment for our own benefit. So this aspiration prayer is very, very important. So to give a little bit of the history, to see what the lineage is, the lineage means that here is the teacher who has a disciple, who then becomes a master, a teacher himself, and then they have disciples, and then those disciples then become masters, and so on like that. So whether it's men or women, so it's men or women, it's not exclusively men. But here in this particular case, we're talking about, you can see this lineage, that it starts with Buddha Shakyamuni. And Buddha Shakyamuni is the historical Buddha. And it's through the Buddha Shakyamuni bringing together his disciples and then going into samadhi, entering into samadhi, deep samadhi, and answering the questions of his disciples, do all these things come out? Do all these things come forward and so on? So it's through the interaction between the students of Buddha Shakyamuni and Buddha Shakyamuni himself. So and that's why we try and have conversation. We try and have a discussion. We invite that discussion, and I'm trying not to make this a lecture, but it turns into a lecture many times because there's no discussion. When I give opportunity for discussion, we should think, wow, I have an opportunity here to do this. As a matter of fact, I have a responsibility to myself and to the other people that are involved here to really try and understand this better and ask some questions. And you'll find that you invest yourself in what this process is. You're just not being passive and docile. Meditation, the whole process of meditation is a very active process. It's not a passive process. It's an active process. We have to engage it. We have to stay with it. We have to develop it. And we have to continue to sustain it. So, so using that as an example, this is what Buddha Shakyamuni did in his method of teaching, and is continued in the monasteries today. In the Buddhist tradition and so on. Whether it's done in other traditions, I can't say for sure, but I know some are. I know in the Jewish tradition, they love nothing better to do than to argue over what the meaning of the Torah is. And the Torah are the 5 first books of the Buddha. And they will argue over that all day long. And they enjoy it very much. And they learn from that. It's a process. So there's another tradition that I know engages in that kind of talk, in that kind of conversation. In the Buddhist tradition, in many of the monasteries, they will have debates. And they will do everything. There will be people that are there to distract the debaters in order that they may develop their one-pointed mindfulness on what it is that they are doing and so on, and to be able to become certain in what it is that they are thinking about and talking about. So that's another example of engaging in a method to be able to help them to develop their bodhicitta and stay on the Dharma path. So there's, I'm sure, many, many others. By opening ourselves up to different films, we have some different films. I'm thinking about when we're going to start showing these films very soon. so that you can see some of these things that are on Zoom. So we'll do that, and maybe these kinds of time periods we'll have movies instead of having these talks. Nevertheless, going back to this lineage, so Buddha Shakyamuni, all this generates from him, and in our sense, and then comes Arya Manjushri, who is the Bodhisattva Manjushri, and then Chandrakirti, and then Rigpe Kuchuk and Kusali Chewa. So you can read these, you can look these people up on Google and find out their stories. Google's gotten very good about these things, and many times it will take you to Ricky, what was it called? I'm drawing a blank. Rigpa Ricky or something. Forgive me, but it is like a version of Wikipedia. It's a Buddhist Wikipedia, and it's got lots of good stuff in there. So here's a familiar name is Atisha. Atisha was a great teacher of a contemporary of Gampopa and Pagmadrupa and so on. And so you can learn the history of this lineage and so on. And then Nagarjuna, the school of Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna composed the Madhyamaka, which is a great piece on what it is to be a bodhisattva. This is the kind of stuff that Bernie can talk about, at great length. He is really a very good teacher in this way. He understands many of these things. And then there's Shantideva, another of the great masters who is in this tradition. And then there's Gampopa. Gampopa is the great Lord Gampopa who composed this book, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So all this is within the lineage, the wisdom lineage, this aspiration lineage. This is what I want to do. This is the knowledge that I need to do it. And accumulating all this wisdom. This is one of the two paths. We say that there are two paths. There's the path of wisdom, and there's the path of method. So the method would be the next one that's listed here, the method lineage, which is the profound action lineage, where we take the wisdom and we're actualizing it to make it work, for it to do something. So the action lineage. And we do this by doing the best that we can. We're not going to be all of a sudden great bodhisattvas. We're not going to be able to do that. But we got to be able to kind of work up to it. We got to develop it. We have to do that over what might be lifetimes. But certainly it's going to be over years of our lives, working at it, studying, practicing, and so on like that. And like we've said before, this is a lifestyle. So what better thing do we have to do in our life than to work on these things, to develop this action method lineage, the method of doing this. So it's taking the aspiration and actualizing it. So this is what we've talked about a number of times. And as I said before, you all have expressed how you have seen this happening in your own lives and so on. But we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continually develop this and sustain this, maintain this, and expand it. So the great teachers on this, the great masters are, again, it starts with Buddha Shakyamuni, and then Arya Maitreya, the Buddha Maitreya. So the other one was the Arya Manjushri, the Bodhisattva Manjushri, who symbolizes wisdom, and Maitreya symbolizes loving kindness, wisdom that is being actualized. And then Asanga, and then Vasubandhu, and then Dharmakirti, and then Atisha, and Gampopa again. So all these earlier teachers, you see, these were mostly oral teachings. Some of these things might have been written down, but they were being spread around the land of India and Tibet, as well as other parts of the world, but it's particularly India and Tibet that we're focused on. And finally, it comes to Atisha and to Gampopa, and these two became the beginning of the Kagyu lineage, the lineage that we are part of. We are, our group, the lineage of Dharma Surya Center, at the Tibetan Meditation Center, His Holiness Chotseng Rinpoche, Karchen Rinpoche, all part of the Kagyu, the Drikung Kagyu lineage. There's other lineages. There's the Karma Kagyu. There's many different lineages, parts of that. And again, Bernie can talk about that, and I'm going to ask him to speak about a few of these things if he will. And to kind of open up our mind to some of the possibilities of things that we can read and things that we can study that really help us. Trangu Rinpoche, who is a contemporary of us, he just passed away, I think just this past year or so, who is magnificent, a great, great, great teacher. And so he was Karma Kagyu, and really, really terrific. So this is the method lineage of actualizing and doing the deeds of the wisdom, how to do the deeds of the wisdom and so on. So the actual Dharma practices that we engage in. Then the next lineage is called the realization lineage. This is also called the lineage of the yogis. These are the beings, and this is the Kagyu lineage in particular, the lineage of the yogis. And this is the of those who go off into the hermitages, into the caves and so on. And these are identified by these great masters that it says here, this blessing lineage meditation. It says Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa. Do they sound familiar? We recite that every day in our dedications and very often in our opening prayers, So these are the masters who, through their blessings, through their being able to dedicate their lives, in their compassion to be able to bring this to other beings, that we are able to attain a level of awareness, a level of awakenedness. So this is the realization lineage where things begin to pop open for us. We begin to have that spontaneous presence, that spontaneous awakening and so on. So these things don't happen in a void by themselves. They are part of a process. So any one of these can be very powerful. But if we have the benefit of each one of these building on each other and coming back and supporting and learning more and everything and kind of bringing it all together, bringing it all interconnected, how powerful this becomes. So this blessing lineage, this realization lineage, when we have work to be able to have, understand some aspiration, when we have work for the benefit of some method to be able to do some practices and so on, and then meet some realized practitioners like Garchen Rinpoche and so on, then there's a great blessing there. His presence just becomes a powerful opening. If you don't have the wisdom, if you don't have that method, there will be an impression. You will feel a presence of that great being like Garchen Rinpoche. But when you have the wisdom background, when you have the method background, how much more powerful that becomes. Are there any questions or comments? Anybody have any thoughts about this?
I guess it seems a little like peculiar to me why they break it up, like categorize these different masters in this way. Um, So is part of what they're doing creating like the realization lineage to not break apart, but kind of highlight the Kagyu lineage because this is coming from, it says on here,
Well, it's kind of like an evolution. It's kind of like an evolution.
right. Okay. Yeah, just this isn't like a profound point I'm making or anything or like some deep observation, but yeah, that was the first thing I was thinking of, like where it has like Nagarjuna, which certainly would make sense for the wisdom lineage, but and I was like, well, I would think he'd be like a realized master as well for the method lineage. So it's like, why wouldn't it be? Again, this isn't the spirit I'm sure it's meant in. But those were some of my original thoughts about it. But I do like hearing about the different lineages and like the different masters, and of reading the uh, life of Milarepa and everything as well, and then also listening to, which I would love to hear from. I don't know if you or Bernie is would want to share some more about Jingden Sumgun and his kind of story and how he
Since,
fits in.
okay, since you put me on the spot, you want me to say a little bit about these lineages that I can just remember off the top of
Please, yes,
I would love
absolutely.
that. Yeah, for
Yeah.
my
sure.
head?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Now,
would love that.
generally, in Buddhist, you have the Buddhist teachings, and out of that develops all the Buddhist philosophy. And the two greatest names in that are Nagarjuna, of course, and also Asanga. So when we're talking about the two traditions, we're talking about the traditions that come down to these two great masters. Now, the difference they call them two different traditions because there's slight differences in the way that the Bodhicitta is explained and the Bodhisattva vow is explained. How a lot of the differences have to do with when it's proper to give the Bodhisattva vow, what are the commitments that go along with it, and details like that, which are really of secondary importance, in my opinion. But the people like this are very precise. They want to draw the distinction so that people don't get confused. They'll read something in the tradition of Nagarjuna about Bodhicitta, and it'll say one thing, and it'll say something slightly different in the tradition of Asanga, the masters that followed on from him. So that's why they talk about two traditions. Now, traditionally, it's said that both of these traditions were combined in Atisha. Atisha is one of the great masters that went from India to Tibet. And
Can I ask one
yes,
question real quick?
sure.
Was Asanga a student of Nagarjuna?
Not directly. They lived several hundred years later. So
Okay, so Nagarjuna came first,
right.
and then over a few generations, then Asanga came.
Right.
I just want to make that point.
Okay. So that, like I said, both traditions were combined in Atisha, the master who came to from India to Tibet and founded what's known as the Kadampa tradition. And he spent a lot of his time teaching about bodhicitta and the importance of bodhicitta. And to the point that it was said in the Kadampa tradition that all the teachings of Buddha could be summarized in the teaching of Bodhicitta. The Bodhicitta contained all the teachings of Buddhism. And so that was the tradition. Now, and Gampopa, before he met Milarepa, was a monk in the Kadampa tradition. So that's how these two traditions, the tradition of Nagarjuna and the tradition of Asanga, came into the Kagyu through Gampopa, who was first a monk in the Kadampa tradition, and then later became a student of Milarepa. And of course, the other tradition is the yogi tradition that came down through Milarepa, through his Marpa and his teacher and Naropa and Tilopa. So that's the yogi tradition. So the Kagyu combined the traditional monastic tradition, which came down through Atisha, and the Kadampas, and the yogic tradition, which came from Naropa, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, and Milarepa, because of course Gampopa was also a student of Milarepa, and of course Gampopa is the author of this text, the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So that's a very high-level summary of it all. Don't ask me to talk about what the distinct differences are between traditions, because I can't remember without looking them up. But that just gives you an idea of what the different traditions are.
Well, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm trying to send a chronology of some of the masters that I have been saving, over the number of years. So I'm trying to send that to you in WhatsApp and having a little bit of difficulty here, but I will persevere and get this done.
Hey,
But that,
Bernie, um, so like with the yogic lineage, is that the lineage that's coming from the Mahasiddhas of India, or are the Mahasiddhas in India throughout all of these? Or I don't know if Nagarjuna is considered like.
Yes, Tilopa would be considered Tilopa and Naropa would be considered among the Mahasiddhas, so they're part of the Mahasiddha tradition of India, right?
And these other traditions don't come from that lineage of the Mahasiddhas, like the Anga and
The other traditions were traditional monastic traditions, and not the yogic tradition. Now, as far as the difference in the presentation of Bodhicitta between the two traditions, I really couldn't say. It's at least not without researching it a little further. But yeah, there's considered the yogic. Gampopa is considered to combine the yogic tradition with the monastic tradition, and that's what forms the traditional Kagyu lineage.
Bernie, forgive first of all, that was amazing. Like I literally was just like had a couple light bulbs go off. So thank you. Is there like a graphic, like a visual that I could, and Lance, if you've already, is it somewhere that it's obvious that I'm just not seeing it?
The different lineages, the list of the different masters?
Yes.
There was a list of the masters on the Drigon Kagyu site once. I haven't looked at it so long.
Okay.
I can't say if it's still there, but they talked about this was that was the lineage of Mahamudra, and they had the two lineages of Mahamudra, which were the short lineage and the long lineage, which is something different. Now, what I told you is what I remember from a teaching by Khenpo Soltram in Frederick, which he gave along with the Bodhisattva vow, but without consulting my notes, if I ever bothered to take them at that time. I really can't give you the details, but he gave a very detailed presentation on the difference between the two traditions of wisdom and the tradition of what a skillful means or action. Is that what it was called? Okay.
No,
Method, I think they're calling it method, if that's what you mean.
The method, skillful means methods, more or less the same thing. Just a different word for it.
So I'm just assuming both you and Lance have taken Bodhisattva vows before.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. I didn't want to assume. That's why I just wanted to. Yeah, that was really awesome. Thank you, Bernie.
Oh yeah.
if you read those chapters in Jewel Ornament of Liberation, you'll learn a lot, and they will have references to other things that you can start, you start looking at. So it's like opening up an encyclopedia, and one thing leads to another thing. And before you know it, you spent a couple of hours, reading from one thing to another. So this is the same thing. So it's developing your practice by studying.
Are you talking about the full text, not the one with the chapter notes, right? That's what you mean, reading the jewel.
Right, the Jewel Ornament Liberation text. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Matt, it's funny you mentioned something like a moment ago, but I'll send you a photo of it. But on my vision board, my accountability board, I actually have right now. I'm reading again through Milarepa. Like it's one of my active assignments I've given myself. So I know you had just mentioned that as well. So I'm working on that as well. So yeah, there's it. Like I love all of this, and I wonder if it would make sense if I would start kind of where Bernie just described. Do you think that's helpful, like having some of that foundational, almost like you said, didactic knowledge in place? Like Bernie and Lance, I guess that's a question for you all, like going back and like, so for Islam, there's the 5 sects of Islam and understanding from Prophet Muhammad where things split, like how they split and the distinctions of you fast this way, this is the person who's in charge, this is how you wear your head cover. Is there a book or is there a 101 for that would be like pretty straightforward, like that I could find on Amazon? Or you're just saying
The
Joel?
101 for the Bodhisattva vow is just this chapter of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. That's the best place to start that I know of.
Okay.
And if you read that chapter, you'll have most of what you need. I can search through my notes and see if I can find a teaching on the Bodhisattva vow, because I remember it quite distinctly, but memory being what it is, I have a hard time remembering the details. So
Yeah, and in the Jewel Ornament Liberation, they cite many of the masters who these teachings came from. So then that's what I was saying. You can cross-reference, you can go back to those masters, those books, and learn more and more and more and so on. And really, I think this is how you build up a library, of books and understand things. So, but the Jewel Ornament Liberation, I think Bernie's correct, is the first reference book, is your go-to book. And then a lot of these teachers, you see, were Indian. They were from India. And it wasn't until Gampopa, it wasn't until Marpa, it wasn't until Milarepa, and Atisha was Indian, wasn't he? He wasn't Tibetan.
he was from the great monastery in India, Nalanda, right? So
Yeah.
he was one of the head monks there, and he was one of the kings of Tibet asked him to come to Tibet and teach Buddhism, and there's a story with that. So he came, and he actually taught for 12 years and died in Tibet. So that's Atisha. It's so.
Yeah. So the point is that these teachings came from India and were brought to Tibet and were translated, for the Tibetan people and so on. And then they began to practice in the Vajrayana way and so on. So a lot of the practices that we practice are the result of these teachings that came from India. So, and so not to go too far off on a tangent here, but Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, is called the father of Tibetan Buddhism because he brought practices with him. He was a great Mahasiddha. He was a great practitioner, a great accomplished one. And he brought many of these practices with him that in India were just very, very select people will watch or would practice these. But in Tibet, it became, what it was that the Tibetan people were doing. Okay, so this is not my strong suit. I will tell you right now. I am not a good scholar, and these kinds of, tracing these kinds of things. I'm familiar with them, and I've studied many of them, but it's not the kind of thing that sticks with me. In my mind. I get the kernel of the Dharma. I get the kernel of the truth of what's being transmitted, and then I tend to, make it an embodiment of who I am. So there's others who are much greater scholars who can quote chapter verse of every book you can imagine. Okay. So coming back now to this chapter 9, and coming back to this reference outline that we have, is these similes, these 22 similes of bodhicitta. Now, this may seem to be dry, but the more that I have studied this and the more that I've realized this, the juicier it has become. The more real I see it as, the more animated it becomes, the more I recognize the truth, the reality of what bodhicitta is. So these 22 similes are pointing at that for us, but it's up to us to be able to bring them in and see how this works and so on. Having said this, there is another great master whose book you might be interested in, and it is called Vast as the Heavens, Deep as the Sky. Vast as the heavens, deep as the sky, deep as the sea, excuse me. Vast as the heavens, deep as the sea. And this was composed by, it was a collection of like 4-line aspiration prayers, if you will, by Kunu Rinpoche. And Kunu Rinpoche, he passed away maybe about 40 years ago, 50 years ago, something like that. And he actually was the teacher of Kenshin Rinpoche for the Jewel Ornamental Liberation and the Bardo Todal. So he was a very, very important teacher in the 20th century. And he, the only thing that was ever published that he wrote was this Vast as the Heavens, Deep as the Sea, because his concentration, his focus was totally on bodhicitta. So that becomes a great inspiration, you know, it was to me. So if I can ask someone, well, maybe I better do it. So it says here, I'm on page 15. It says, the essence of the cultivation of bodhicitta, the essence of the cultivation of bodhicitta, why we do it, why we cultivate bodhicitta, is the desire to achieve, perfect, complete enlightenment for others' benefit. So bodhicitta is not for our benefit directly, it is for the benefit of others. And then we derive whatever benefit there is by doing that. So that's a very important distinction, to be able to understand the motivation of the bodhisattva, that this is bodhicitta. Was bodhicitta taught in the Hinayana, Bernie?
Not nearly as much as it's taught in the Mahayana. I can't say it's completely absent, but the main teachings of bodhicitta are in the Mahayana.
But in the Hinayana, it was a selfish motivation to have loving kindness, to have wisdom, to have compassion for oneself situation, to have joy for oneself, and have equanimity for oneself. You know, but in the Mahayana, then it became for the benefit of others, that we do this for the benefit of others. So the two paths, when we talk about the two paths, we're talking about the two paths of accumulation. So the two paths of accumulation is the accumulation of wisdom and the accumulation of method, of compassion. So in these 22 similes, at the ordinary level, the broadest level of defining this, there are three. And it says here in the text, it says, the earnest desire to achieve enlightenment is like the earth, the basis of all good qualities. So it's talking about what is bodhicitta? Well, it's like the earth. It is the basis of everything else that we do. So it's like the earth. It's also like gold, because a general intention to achieve enlightenment is like gold, it never changes. If you develop that motivation for enlightenment, it's like gold to you, that it keeps you moving forward. It keeps you wanting to be able to polish it, to make it more brilliant, to be able to share it with others and so on. So bodhicitta is like gold. It's not something that we take in one time and put on a shelf. It's something that we're always bringing out, and we're always practicing, we're always polishing, we're always finding ways in which we can actualize it to be better for other people to understand. So the third one is possessing altruistic thought is like the waxing moon. It increases all the virtues. So bodhicitta is like the waxing moon. The waxing moon is when it comes from a new moon, when there's no moon that we see in the sky, to becoming a full moon. The waning moon is the return back to the new moon. So it's decreasing. So the waxing is increasing. So possessing altruistic thought of bodhicitta is like the waxing moon. Every day it's getting bigger and bigger. It's getting more powerful, more powerful. And the more that we study this, the more that we practice this, the more stronger it gets, the greater our motivation becomes, the more ways in which we see that we can actualize this for the benefit of other beings. Our altruism becomes deeper and broader. So these three ordinary levels are motivational, and something that maybe you can write on your wall someplace until you really understand and are motivated by them every day. Keep them handy, put them around, write Post-it notes to yourself. So then the path of application, what comes after this, is how now we take this path of accumulation of wisdom and method, and now we're applying it. We're applying it to other beings. We're applying it to ourselves. We're applying it to our conduct. So this is possessing earnest application is like a fire that burns away obscurations of Buddha, the obscurations, the blockages of Buddha. So this is the application, is to burn away, is to purify those impurities. Remember, we've used the jewel of enlightenment. So this is wisdom and method, that is this jewel, but it's all blocked up. So through the visualization, using the method of the fire, it's burning away that wisdom fire, that wisdom method is burning away all those obscurations. And then what's revealed is the true nature, this indestructible true nature. The fire will not harm this diamond. It's indestructible. This wisdom, this skillful means, this bodhicitta that we have within ourselves is indestructible. It can be blocked up, but it can't be destroyed. So it's up to us to open it and keep it open. So this is like a fire that we continually stoke the fire. We continually feed the fire to keep the purification practice going on. And it's very easy for us to fall backwards. It's very easy for us to get lazy. It's very easy for us to fall into our traps and so on. We can go away for a week or 2 weeks, and we kind of get out of the habit, the routine of doing our practices, and then slowly it begins to deteriorate our practice. And then what starts replacing that is our old bad habits and so on. So we have to be very mindful that we have to keep doing this practice. Whenever I have been at a crossroads in my time of being a Buddhist, and I would go to my teacher of the time and I say, well, I want to, I feel like I've done as much as I can do at this particular juncture, and I want to stay home. I want to develop my practice on my own. And I might look for another teacher, I might look for another way to be able to practice and so on like that. And the teacher would say to me, so that's fine, but don't forget to continue the practice of the Dharma. Don't leave the Dharma. You can take the Dharma with you. It goes wherever you go. Don't lose that. And that has always stayed with me and has become more and more meaningful every year to me. So I realize that. So and the lineage that I look at is the lineage of the Buddha, and it becomes kind of not broken down, but it becomes assimilated into different cultures and different ways and everything. But ultimately, it's the lineage of the Buddha, of being a complete human being. And that's what's being taught to us through the Dharma.
And so when you say Dharma, you're talking about capital D, the teachings.
Of course, yes. The pathway of the Dharma, the pathway of the Buddha, of enlightenment, of liberation, yes. Which includes seeing all the confusions, all the causes of the confusions, but also the antidotes to be able to overcome all those things. It's a complete teaching. It teaches us everything. And it's up to us to take in the teachings and actualize the teachings, to not just have the aspiration, but then to use it in the method, the compassion for ourselves for the benefit of others. That's up to us. So the next of these 22 similes are the 10 bhumis. These are subjects for the path of insight and the path of meditation. So the 10 bhumis. So we've talked about the 10 bhumis before, and the 10 bhumis are the pathway, are the parts of the pathway of the bodhisattva, going through the different stages in a progressive way that you have to complete each stage before you can really go to the next stage. It doesn't mean that we can't expose ourselves to those next stages, to inspire ourselves, to motivate ourselves, to keep going on. But it is like a building block, and we can't go to the next stage until we have stabilized the previous stage. So it's important to be able to realize that. And the bhumis, all this is all in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. There's a chapter here in that, and in the index, and there's an appendix that lists all these things and everything. So it's all in there, and we've talked about it in the past. So the subjects for the path of insight. So the path of insight is really what we talk about when we talk about the fivefold path of Mahamudra, and we talk about the recognizing the guru, recognizing the teacher within us, and that which is out of us, that is external, the teachers that that present to us, that we go to, who are teaching us that within ourselves is the ultimate teacher, is the ultimate guru, is the Buddha within ourselves, to be able to connect with the Buddha within ourselves. That's the ultimate teacher. That's what we're trying to do. And we do that through insight after insight after insight after insight. In other words, we're learning, we're seeing more things. We're seeing how this, because it's simple, but human beings need to be able to cut through all the complexities that they've created for themselves. So these insights are like the scalpel that is helping us to do that, to cut through those fabrications that we've created and so on, that are the blockages. And when we purified all those, when we've cut through all those, then all that is remained is the insight of realization of one is the Buddha. And so the meditation is the method of the stabilization of the insight. We have those insights through the meditation. In other words, it's deeper, it's more profound than just the intellectualization. It has to be the experience of these things, the experience that we have in meditation. So saying that is one thing, but experiencing it is quite another. So I can only say those words, but until we each have that experience of the meditation, it really doesn't mean anything to us anywhere near what the experience is. So, so that's the invitation to really take this in and develop this. And this is why we have a sangha. And I got to emphasize that, the Zoom is great for us to be able to come together to learn these things, to hear these things, and so on. But the Zoom does little to be able to give us that connection, that visceral connection that we have when we go into the shrine room with the teachers and with our brothers and sisters in the sanghas. So the point there is we need to make the effort to join those retreats, to go to those places, to do that, to carve out the time of our busy everyday schedules to say, I'm going to spend a day, I'm going to spend a weekend, I'm going to spend a week to do these things. So having said that, coming up in November, the middle of November, is going to be the Medicine Buddha retreat, the annual Medicine Buddha retreat. I think we're on the 7th or maybe even the 8th year of the retreats at Dharma Surya in Fairfax. And the monks from Saramay Monastery from southern India come in, about 4 or 5 of them come in, and they build a sand mandala. They start on Tuesday, and every day they're building the mandala, and you can be there watching them do this the whole day or just come in for 5 minutes or whatever. But you hear them doing their prayers and so on like that, and building this sand mandala that is about 4.5, 5 feet wide, square, but it's round. The board that they do it on is square, and then this big round sand mandala, and so it's a Medicine Buddha. And then on the weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, they bestow the empowerment for Medicine Buddha, and then they give the instructions for Medicine Buddha. They give teaching on Medicine Buddha, and we do the practice together of Medicine Buddha. And Medicine Buddha to me is very, very important, very, very important. Been my yidam for many, many years, and is magnificent because Medicine Buddha is there for everyone. You don't have to be a Buddha to have benefit of Medicine Buddha. You can use Medicine Buddha for all beings. You can transform, you awaken yourself as Medicine Buddha and help all beings and so on. So, and the 12 aspirations that we recite, most of the times when we do our Thursday night Medicine Buddha practice, it reminds us of what it is to be a bodhisattva and to have the aspirations to become a Buddha, what those aspirations are. So it's very powerful. So anyway, so in 6 weeks or so, there's going to be this retreat. So maybe you can find some time to be able to come to Virginia or to carve out your weekend, whatever it is, to partake of that. And I'm going to come down. My hope is that I can come down and be part of that. So it might be a chance for us all to get together. Might be wonderful. So this meditation, you see, is strengthened by being together, being able to do that. Once we do that together, once we are in the same room together, and we develop that confidence of that power and so on, it becomes easier for us to all go to our respective homes, but be able to bring that together. And despite the fact that we might be living 400 or 500 miles away from each other, we can bring that together, and it's just as if we're sitting right next to each other, and be able to have our sangha and the power of our sangha together and so on. So we need to avail ourselves of those things. It's part of the process. Anybody got any questions or comments about any of this? Does this make sense to you?
It makes sense to me. Questions I have are more practical in nature from like, I'm a big believer in like small daily actions matter over time, like versus like the retreats are important. However, like in relative to the goal of supporting Sangha and community, what are like small daily things? Like, like Adrian, for example, will sometimes give me a call and say, hey, what's going on in your world? Like just call and ask, how I'm doing. Are those sorts of things, like what are more practical ways people could just
Well, of
incorporate?
course, yes. No, those are perfect things. The way we text each other, the way we call each other, and so on like that. Absolutely. But sometimes, I got to say, we don't know what we don't know. And
Mhm.
until we do something, we don't know the power of it. So one thing is not an excuse for not doing something else.
Oh
So,
no, no, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm thinking of just like small supportive actions that, like you said, everything is ultimately like how we're
well,
kinder.
that's what I said. If we come together and we have that confidence of coming together, we share that energy, so to speak. Then
Mhm.
when we go home and we call each other and we see each other on the screen, how much more powerful that becomes.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I think COVID has obviously shifted some of like everything actually for everyone, like relative to online is like the now we're relying on that for
But to
everything.
say it another way, it's COVID that brought us all together.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that completely. So yeah, but you're right. Like I am agreeing with what you're saying because I think I see analogies in the public school system where there's a lot of reliance now on virtual modalities versus the in-person component. So yes, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
Thank
Uh,
you.
So
so,
if I might say something, if you
yeah,
were looking
please, Mike.
for
Yeah.
if you're looking for a regular daily practice of bodhicitta, what's usually recommended is the 7 points of mind training, which is a whole nother teaching, but it comes out of the Kadampa tradition. And it's a lot of different like different sayings, and you're supposed to apply them to your everyday life. And of course, there's also the 37 activities of Bodhisattva, which Garchen Rinpoche places a lot of emphasis on teaching. So those are the two texts that you could study if you want to apply the practice of bodhicitta in your daily life.
That's actually, thank you for prompting that because I do have the small yellow pamphlet that Lance sent, the 37 practices. So I'll go back and just revisit that because I rotate through a couple different
Oh,
rich.
yeah. What Garchen Rinpoche suggested is that you could just recite that regularly and think about it. So and that way you could develop your bodhicitta because now I mean of course we've got these horrible things happening in Israel and uh, everybody's saying revenge, 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 and it's not the bodhisattva path. Let's just put it that way. Don't repay evil with evil, and we just have to develop more loving kindness and compassion in this world. So anyway, but it's a good text to study. It's a good text to study.
Thank
So
you, Bernie.
sure.
Amen. Yes. Thank you. And Bernie and I have shared many, many retreats together,
Yeah.
weekend retreats and different practices and so on. So, and it's great, for 20 years now, you develop that relationship, that friendship and so on. And it's marvelous to be able to do that. So, but it's taken effort to do that too. It just didn't fall into our laps. We had to call each other. We had to, say, let's get together, let's do these things, and so on. And sometimes it wasn't always easy, but we do these things, and the result of it is our spirituality, is our bodhicitta.
I'm kind of curious, like in order to cultivate this, if either of you would be willing to discuss it, what have you shifted and let go of conventionally in order to make space for this? Like what,
Everything.
everything. Well, that's not helpful. Gotta be more specific. Like I'm letting go of keeping up with the Kardashians, okay, y'all? No, like like it's, in all seriousness, what have you all over your experience? What did you shift, and now like you can say, oh, that was hard in the moment. Now it's not hard. Like now I can look back and be like, it was worth it to shift from that.
I'll let Bernie answer the question.
Well, as I tell everybody, I'm a sort of person who has to have a daily schedule to do things. So the thing is just to make a regular daily schedule or weekly schedule and have time in it for practice study. And that when you say make time for it, it just is very literal. You just have to have a schedule and say, I will devote this amount of time to my practice every day, and I will devote this amount of time to study every day. And Pete does a very good job of that too. He has a schedule and he does his practices every day. And it's just literally deciding I have a weekly schedule, and in my weekly schedule, this amount of time is devoted to the Dharma. That's all I can say.
Okay, that point's more of, I think, a implementation component. I'm thinking like, was there something you were like, you used to watch reality TV? That's previously been mine, or just junk TV. Like I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I would rather read Milarepa, right? And like, or my Harry Potter series. It's fall season, right? But I'd rather maybe prep and meditate. Like, did you have a painful crossover where you're like, okay, I'm gonna let go of this to incorporate the practice? Something had to give.
It was just something that gradually grew. There was no big crisis moment. Of course, when you do have problems in your life, you tend to practice more. That's kind of a superstitious way of doing things, I think, but people do it anyway. So, it's just something daily practice just generally grows, and you decide to devote a certain amount of time to it. And other than that, it's not really. Obviously there are more dedicated people than me, but just to have a schedule, just to have a regular practice, and that's well, anyway. And a lot of these self-help books, they say process is more important than goals. That you just have a process for doing everything, and your commitment is not to achieving some certain goal. Your commitment is just to the process, and the process is your regular practice. So I can't say anything more about it than that. So
I know, Zara, for me, this is something what you're talking about. I've been thinking a lot about for myself, and realizing how addicted I am to my phone.
everyone is
Part of
these
it.
days. It's scary.
Yeah, and like just the constant need for stimulation, and I got to be listening to this or having this on, and it's just like it's unbelievable the amount of time that it takes up and how addictive it is. And I'm someone who just personally gets very compulsive and addictive with things. That's just, so there's something in my wiring in my brain where it's been like that for most of my life. So that's something that I've been really trying to prioritize cutting down on, and which isn't easy because at least at this point it is very addictive. It's compulsive for me in that way that but I realize that there's to have adequate room for my practice, I need to stop doing, and I need to stop doing it for other reasons too, just because it's not bringing me any kind of happiness, or just waste of time for 90% of it. But that's one example, I think, of what you're kind of talking about, that for me, I'm realizing my obscurations are on a grosser level than some others, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I think realizing that is the step in the right direction, and then replacing those addictions with let's call them aspirations for other things. The aspirations for bodhicitta and the Dharma and so on like that. I mean, for instance, I'm really good at memorizing lists. I've always been able to do that. And so now, memorizing all these lists of Dharma and so on comes easy to me. And and the meaning comes to me slowly after I get the list together, because then I can sit back in my own way at my own time and say, oh well, here's that list, and then I start to see how the interconnections work and so on. So in the beginning, it may be a fabricated way of learning these things, but then I learn the meaning of them as I'm moving along, as I develop with that and so on. So. But to answer your question, I've given up a lot of things. I've given up a lot of friends. It's not that I gave them up, but I started doing what I'm doing, and I stopped being social with them. You know, they stopped calling me. I stopped calling them. I stopped watching TV programs. I stopped watching baseball and football in particular. I finally realized football is a very dangerous sport. Now you're watching people kill each other practically, and finally giving that up. And then I always ask myself, what better thing do I have to do when I think about, well, I got to prepare because we got a talk coming up or something like that, and I need to prepare for that, and I think to myself, well, what better thing do I have to do than that? When I retired, I literally made a vow to myself. That's all I had to do to myself, was that I was going to spend the rest of my life practicing and helping others to develop the Dharma. And that was an important part of my life. I think it's the most important part of my life. And I've worked up to it, in my earlier life, and I've looked forward to it, and now I'm able to do that. And every time I want to get lazy or something like that, I say, well, what better thing do I have to do? And I re-engage.
I was, Bernie, you mentioned the event in Israel. I was at the gym early this morning after I landed from the airport, and I saw all the screens had all of the stuff. And I actually, with intentionality, chose not to look at them because, I mean, it was just so negative, right? And then there's an impact on the thoughts and mindset. And I just wondered, Lance or even Bernie, is that okay for me to make that discernment and say, I'm going to choose not to sit there and glare at all this negativity, right? Because it competes and takes me down a negative, for me, a negative pathway, at least right now, where I don't feel great. I feel heaviness and sadness, and it impacts my energy for being joyful. Like in that sense, is that discernment? Is that spiritual discernment to not use my mind in that way, but to think of other things? Like I said, oh, I'm so sad. I literally was like, oh, that's so sad, right? I had that thought, but I didn't continue to stare at it.
What do you think, Barney?
Well, I think it's fine not to watch the evening news, the news regularly. It just generally stirs up a lot of negative emotions in people. And I mean, there's a certain level we have to know what's going on in the world because we are in a democracy and we need to vote. And so we need to be informed. But I think it's probably a good idea not to be watching the news every night, because it's really, you don't get that good quality information from the nightly news. So, and now that we've got news 24 hours a day, it's even worse. So you don't need to do that. And it's probably better to only look at that stuff occasionally and not regularly. That's my opinion.
Well, I exercise the wisdom of discriminating awareness as much as I can. And I look at it in a practical sense. I mean, there's many ways to focus that wisdom of discriminating awareness. But when it comes to the practical things of everyday life and everything, I try not to obsess with it. I expose myself to it. I try and understand it. I got some news outlets or whatever that I have confidence in. They can get very sensational in a hurry. And if I don't allow myself to get sucked into that, and just get, what's really going on, and then digest that and so on. And put it into the mix of what's happening, and to I think, like Bernie said earlier, that we have to practice bodhicitta even with the people who are doing these evil deeds and so on. We're not selective about who we do bodhicitta, who we have bodhicitta for. We have it for all beings. And if they're that sick and that's what it is, like a sickness, an affliction, they don't know. They might be hopped up on drugs, to do the things that they do. That's what a lot of these leaders do. They give these soldiers, or whatever you want to call them, give them drugs so they can do these things. I
Well,
was thinking about today, Paul and I were the raping. How does somebody get, motivated to want to rape somebody in this midst? How can a guy, do that? I can't understand that.
yeah,
You
I have
know,
a hard
what's
time
that?
understanding. I have a hard time understanding it too, but leaving aside that, you gotta realize that drugs do play a big role these days, not just in the terrorists, and they are on drugs, but the US Army also gives its pilots drugs too, amphetamines to keep them going. So yeah, the drug culture is part of the military culture right now, and it does not, well, it's not a good thing. We're the world is headed down a bad road, and you got to turn it around, really. So
Well, we do it one person at a time. We start with ourselves and whatever our sphere of influence is, we try and help that. But
yeah,
I think to have the our children in mind, and our children's children and their children in mind, I think is important. Okay, well, thank you for the questions and the discussion. So let me go back to the text, and I'm sure that'll trigger some more things. So here we were talking about the path of the 10 bhumis, the subjects for the path of insight and the path of meditation. So the path of insight, of realizing this wisdom within yourself, and the meditation to be able to use that wisdom and understand the transcendence of what it is to be a complete human being. So here it says point 5. It says possessing perfection of generosity like a treasure that satisfies all sentient beings. So bodhicitta is like a treasure. Possessing moral ethics is like a jewel mine, the source of precious qualities. So bodhicitta is like a jewel mine. Bodhicitta is like the ocean, which is like patience. Possessing perseverance is like a vajra, the indestructible vajra. We use this as a symbol for that. So solid it cannot be destroyed by any means. So the vajra is like, in Hindu, they talk about this as the adamantine symbol. This is the diamond symbol. This is the diamond. So it's that indestructibility. And it's possessing meditative concentration like Mount Meru, not scattered by projected thoughts. And 10, it's possessing discriminating wisdom like medicine. It heals illness of afflicting emotions and subtle obscurations to enlightenment. So bodhicitta is like medicine. It's like Mount Meru, the stability of Mount Meru. It's like the vajra, the indestructibility, and so on. So this is what Bernie was talking about a few minutes ago when he was talking about the 6 mind trainings. The mind training of 3 of the body, of the intellect, of the speech, and of the mind, of the meditation, and so on. These are the 6 paramitas. So that's what I just read, were the 6 paramitas. So going back and looking at that, and there's a chapter in this book, The Joy and Liberation, about the 6 paramitas. So being able to study and apply that to our lives. So then also was possessing possessing aspiration prayer is like a wish-fulfilling jewel that accomplishes all aspirations. So when we are using this, when we visualize many of the Buddhas, and in particular the Bodhisattva Shenrezig, in his hands, like this, his two lower hands, he's holding the wish-fulfilling jewel. What we want this to be, what we want our life to be, what we want this to be. This is our aspiration. So, and we're working to make it come true, to develop that, to make it come true. So the bodhicitta is like the wish-fulfilling jewel. It's possessing strength like the sun, with fully ripened trainees like the sun. So all this stuff is fuel for the sun. The sun is burning up all this energy, all this matter, all this energy. So we're feeding it with all this stuff for the sake of wisdom and the sake of method. And possessing primordial wisdom is like the melodious sound of the Dharma, giving inspirational teachings to trainees. So this is an important question. When you are doing practice, when we are spending Sundays now to do the purification practice, the Om Ahong purification practice, or the deity yoga practices, where the mantras become so important, how inspirational has that become for you? When we're doing those mantras, we're reciting those mantras, how inspirational, how much of a connection does that provide for you to connect with that spirituality within yourself, that sacredness, that knowing that we are connected together doing this, and that there's thousands and thousands of other beings all around the world that are reciting these things, this melodious sound of the Dharma. How inspirational is that? And is that not bodhicitta? To see bodhicitta as that, practicing bodhicitta as the melodious sound when we do these things. And if we're doing these things properly, we're developing one-pointed mindfulness, because the mantra is mind protection. If we're doing it properly, the only thing that our mind is focused on, that we're thinking about, is that mantra, the sound of that mantra. And that is the conduit that connects us to that indestructible vibration that we're all part of.
Lance, I will say something as a practical side note, that I just started training myself. If I'm going to bed at night and I wear my mala beads on my wrist, and I'm like, oh, something's still in my head. Like I try to write things down so they're out of my head, but like I'm having like frustration towards someone in a negative way. I just literally start touching and saying, "Om Padme Hung," just really repeating it. And it's not crazy to you all, but I actually, it's like my soul is like, like I feel it's experiential, right? Like I literally feel like my blood pressure going down, and I'm like, go to sleep. Like my soul's like, now we can sleep. But it's within a second, within 3 seconds, I feel a visceral difference. It's palpable just by touching and saying just quickly over and over. So I've had that experience. I know we talk about it, but it's even in those critical moments where you just use it anytime. It's so portable. So I just wanted to point that out. Like I do that often at night if I'm struggling.
That's great. Yes, I totally understand. And I do the same thing.
Hi,
Okay.
Mark.
My apologies to all of you for being late. And
You're in Alaska.
I feel very humble about this, but I joined as soon as I could. And Lance, please tell me where we are in our literature so that I can join you fully.
We're in the Jewel Ornament Liberation outline book. This book here.
And where are we?
On page 15. In the middle of the page. So we're on
Okay.
we're on point 15.
That's exactly where I am. Thank you
Right.
very, very much. And please, all of you, accept my humble apology.
Of course. You can watch this on Zoom on YouTube when you're ready.
Thank you. I will do that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or points that you want to raise, questions before we continue? Okay. So then point 15 in this is the special path of a bodhisattva. So we're on the 10 bhumis. So now we're talking about bhumi 8, 9, and 10. So 15 says, possessing special clairvoyance with a great wisdom is like a great king. So in other words, the bodhicitta is like the power of being a great king, can benefit other sentient beings without any restriction. The king can go anywhere, do anything they want. So with this bodhicitta, it empowers us to be able to help all beings without any limitations, any restrictions. Then the next one is possessing merit and perfect wisdom like a treasury. It's a storehouse with many virtuous accumulations. So to get to this point, we have done many, many practices. We have done many, many study sessions. We have recited many, many mantras and so on. And we have the confidence of doing those. We have the merit of doing those. So it's like a treasury of this sacredness, of this power that we have amassed within ourselves. That is not something that we become arrogant about, but it's that we realize that we are plugged in. We are plugged into this natural state of mind, to this natural love, to this natural bodhicitta. We are plugged into it and we become energized with it, and it just flows through us naturally, effortlessly, because of this great treasury. And then the next one is 17, possessing the branches of enlightenment like a highway. The noble ones followed and will be followed by others. So it's like a bodhicitta is like a highway that when we sort of, feel like we're veering off the side of the road, we see the signposts and say, oh, here is our destination. We need to continue on this road. We need to keep on here. So it's well marked for us. It's got these lines of demarcation of saying, okay, this is the direction I need to go in, and I need to keep going in this positive direction and so on, and be able to see that I'm making progress and being able to do that. So this has been followed by others. This was created by others. This was manifested by others, and others have followed it. And we have the confidence of following the same thing because of what they have taught us, what they have showed us, what the connection that we've had with the Sangha, with our brothers and sisters, the connection that we've had with the masters through the scriptures and so on, and the teachings of our Vajra masters and so on. We have the confidence of all that we're on the right path, we're on the right highway to get to where it is that we're actually trying to go, which is liberation. And this liberation, will along this road are many exits and so on that can take us to many confusing places that maybe we're not prepared to go to, or that we have been to before, and we realize that we've accomplished what we need to do in those places, and we need not to go back to them. So that we need to keep focused for what our destination is. So, this goes back to the question we were talking about before, by being influenced by the things that we watch on television and so on. When we see the news and so on, we see the pitfalls of what it is. And if our pathway is liberation, we can't allow ourselves to wallow into the emotions of getting caught up in all this negativity and so on. In some ways, that feels real good to us. We want to do that. It gives us a temporary purpose, to get emotional about these things. But if we can say, no, I got to keep on my pathway for liberation, for peace, and so on, and I will take I've got room in my automobile to take everybody with me. Anybody that wants to come on this path, I've got room in my automobile. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go to every detour and be loading people in all the time, because most of those people don't want to go. They don't even know what it is where I'm going and so on. So we have to stay focused. But anybody who is looking for a ride, I'll give them a ride.
Hey, can I ask? I want to. You bring up something very, very practical where I am right now in the journey, where I want everyone to get in the car, and I actually had to stop. Started telling myself, don't chase energy. Right? I started cueing myself, don't chase the energy, just be you, and in that, the people who want to get in will come naturally. Do you have any practical discernment on that? Because sometimes that's hard for me because because I'm in a helping field, naturally just want to like save everybody, right? Like there's some aspect of just default like habitual behavior where I'm like, I believe everyone is good. And that's just even before the journey I'm on with you. However, in what you're describing, do you have some tips on knowing like, no, like, because you only have so much energy in 24 hours, right? And if you're spread too thin, you're not actually probably effective in going towards enlightenment, right? So do you have anything to offer to that?
Well, it's a trial and error process, because, we want to help people just like you said, but, we're going to make some errors. We have made some errors where we've given people too much time, too much energy, and they've just, squandered it. They haven't used it or something like that. And maybe, it turned our energy away from other people who might really want to benefit from it. But it's a trial and error process of developing wisdom, through the method of doing this and saying, okay, I'm willing to take the chance. I will sow some seeds, but I learned to draw some boundaries for myself, where I've sowed the seeds. Now it's up to them to take it up and to be able to do it. So what's the example of if you have something that's precious and you're holding it like this and you let go of it, it falls out of your hand. But if you're wise enough to hold that precious object and open it up like this, it will stay with you. And another example of that is like a bird, that you can hold the bird. I don't remember exactly how the saying goes, but you need to let the bird go away, to fly away. And sometimes the bird will come back, and sometimes you got to let people, you've told them everything that you need to know. Maybe you've gone through it once or twice or even 3 times, but you say, that's it. Now it's up to them. They got to go, and you just let them go. And then you'll see if they come back to you. And many times they come back to you. And the ones that come back to you are great. Another example is the turtle, the blind turtle from the bottom of the ocean that goes up once every 100 years to the top and pokes his head through the yolk. That's how rare it is to be a precious human being. But to find a practicing precious human being is like finding stars in the daytime.
Wow, Lance, that's huge what you just said, to find a practicing human. Wow, that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, that's a great saying. That's not something I thought of, but that's something that was taught to me, and yes, it's absolutely true. So we see if you've been in our group, for any period of time, you see how many people have come through and have dropped out for one reason or another, and how many people have stayed, and what the mindset of the people who have stayed is like. So you can see how it works. But those people who have dropped out for one reason or another, it's great to think and to know that seeds have been sown.
Right.
And when the conditions are ready, when the causes are ready for those individuals, you have to trust in the purity of the seeds. And in their own space and time, fruition will come. So and that's taken me a long time to realize, because I would always take it very personally if people would stop coming or something like that. Oh, I said something wrong, I did something, I wasn't right, blah blah blah, and then but I find out that I get a phone call, 2 years later or something, somebody calls and says, Lance, are you still teaching? Because what you told me 2 years ago was so great, and I've used it so many times, but I need to go a step further now. Can we reconnect? And that's happened to me so many times. So it's just given me confidence to not take these things personally.
When did this happen for you in your journey? Because that's obviously an ego thing for you to be offended, right? For you not to have compassion. Like like I'm just saying that practically, because that's something I feel too when I have an employee leave. Like I take it personally, right? I'm like, why are you leaving me? Oh, you have to move for a military assignment, right? Like the context of a person's life. When did that mindset change for you?
Well, years ago, but even now, the thought may cross my mind, but I have to activate my teachings. I have to activate, the training. I have to rely on the practice to get over that, because my ego is very strong, and it says, "Oh, you screwed up" or something like that. But I have to maybe sometimes think through a process to do that. But mostly now, it is what it is, and I can't worry about it, because, I have confidence in what I'm doing, and confidence in who the people that I share with are doing.
And we have confidence in you. Never fear.
Well, God bless you. Thank you very much.
Mark, you're so nice. You're so sweet.
Okay. All right. So we can finish a couple more here. So we were like a highway. So the bodhicitta is like a highway. And it behooves you to use this as a study guide. What is bodhicitta? Well, pull this out and think about it. All these things are meditations. When I tell you, I've spent, and I'm sure Bernie has spent, and many, many other people have spent hours and hours and hours contemplating these things, thinking about these things, reading these things, getting stuck and using these things to unstuck us, or things like that. And these are priceless tools in order to develop our meditation, our contemplation, and our liberation. So if you don't use them, you're wasting them. But in your space and time, you'll do it. So the next one is number 18. Possessing compassion and special insight is like a conveyance. One can smoothly proceed without deviating into samsara or nirvana. So a conveyance, like a conveyor belt. We're not driving the car anymore. We're just laying back in the conveyance. Maybe we're on the bus. We're on the magic bus. And the bus is just moving on its own. It's in automatic, autonomous driving or whatever. And we're just on the bus. We don't have to worry about, we don't have to think about what is samsara or nirvana. We're just on that conveyance. We're just moving along effortlessly without our having to prescribe all this, to make all this happen. So 19 is possessing the power of complete recollection and confidence is like the water in a well, the water of a well. Without exhaustion, it holds the Dharma that one has heard and not heard. And this really is the experience of the insight. The experience of the meditation, the insight, that it's like you realize, you recognize you have this well within you. You have all this wisdom is within you. And all you need to do is just be quiet, be still, be mindful, control your mind, and slowly, slowly, that bucket that's in the well of wisdom water will rise up all by itself. And that has to be experienced. It's all there. And that's how we say that the Buddha has said, we all have that Buddha nature within ourselves. It's that well of wisdom, of skillful means, of joy, of equanimity. It's bodhicitta is that well of water, bodhicitta water that is within ourselves. When we cloud it up, with all of this activity and everything, we're just blocking it up. But when we become peaceful and calm, then it just comes up naturally. Yes, Mark.
Is that is that my experience when I meditate? Would you say? I think it is.
Sure. Sure. To whatever degree you're meditating, if you resonate with those statements, absolutely, then yes.
I do. I do.
And that's why we like you so much.
Thank you. I feel like a blunt instrument around all of you. But nevertheless, my day will come inch by inch, moment by moment, and I'm so happy to be with all of you.
Okay, we're glad that you're here. Okay. All right, so that's it for tonight. We'll pick this back up next week. The Buddha's level. We're going to finish this part, and then there's more to this bodhicitta. We could spend a lot of time. We could spend a month, 2 months, 3 months. We could spend a lifetime talking about bodhicitta. But the real point is to be able to experience it yourself through sitting yourself down on your cushion, on your chair, wherever it is, and allowing yourself to go through the process that we have gone over so many times to get to these points of clarity, of emptiness, and unimpededness. The meditation mind, the mind of Mahamudra. So we don't need a lot of detail about what it is. It's just a question of being able to quiet the mind naturally, and naturally it will open up this well of wisdom and bodhicitta. Okay, any comments or questions?
Lance, have you heard of Ayurveda?
What's that?
Have you heard of Ayurveda?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. I was just curious. It just resonates, like you're talking about the inner bodhicitta where it's always there, and like we've strayed so far from just the simplicity of like nature, like living as we should, that we have all these other illnesses and diseases. But like listening to you said that just popped, that mind just came. I was like wondering if you knew, like
Yeah, and Ayurveda speaks of the holism of medicine and of being a human being and so on. It's the body, speech, and mind.
Mhm.
And being able to, a holistic practitioner, treats all of that, can't just focus in on one particular thing and stay with that thing. You got to look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
And Bernie's been a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine for a long time.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No, not a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine.
What is it then?
So, no, homeopathic medicine. I'm not
Oh,
even a
homeopathic.
Okay, so it's a little
practitioner of that. So I get more grief of that in my life for being a supporter of homeopathy than anything else. I could say I'm a communist and I would get less criticism that I'm in favor of homeopathic medicine, really. So, but that's neither here nor there. But no, I know a little bit about Ayurveda, but not very much. And Tibetan medicine is based on Ayurveda as well. So it's really Ayurveda as of 1000 AD. It went to Tibet and it was further developed there. So
Well, I was just like, it's interesting because they prescribe like getting up really early. They talk when you're most likely to be God conscious is before 6, but like as the transition in light, and that you should do your meditation then, because then you're more likely you seeing all the but I was just curious because like I've started shifting my practice, And I find it way more peaceful to do like between 5:30 and 6 a.m.
Well,
So
before the sun comes up, I think is the point.
yes, yes, yes,
Regardless of what time it is, it's the point of the sun.
exactly. Yeah.
You can feel your own energy best then.
Exactly. And they describe some of why that is from a like a different paradigm. But like anyways, I feel it. It's nice. I was just curious if you had because I've been struggling with when is the best time to meditate. And I just went to that. I was like, it does feel good. I feel like energetic. I'm ready to go at 6 a.m. I'm like, let's go.
Well,
Yeah,
years ago, I used to do that religiously. Yes.
yeah, that's also true in Chinese Taoism. They recommend practicing early in the morning, and that's why you see all these Tai Chi practitioners doing the Tai Chi in the park first thing in the morning, because
Oh,
that's the best time to do it for the same reason.
okay. That makes sense. Thank you. That was a one-off. I was just curious. Thank you.
All right. Well, this has been a good topic, a good discussion. Everybody's had something really good to say. So thank you all very much for participating in this. So, Matt, you are the Umze this evening. Will you recite the dedication prayers, please?
Would you like me to go through all of them, starting with the lineage dedication?
Please, yes.
Sure. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa, Pagmo Drupa, and Lord Jinkumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn may it arise, where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activity spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drinkumpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Dedication prayer by Lord Jingdam Sungdan. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yadams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara, nirvana, and the innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Om. Om, Ah, Om. Om, Ah, Om. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Terrific. Thank you, Matt, everybody. Thank you very much. So I'll see you on Sunday. If you can come on Thursday, Thursday has kind of dwindled down, and not that it's been a bad thing, but it would be great to have people participate in the Medicine Buddha practice whenever you can. We've been going over a little bit more of the explanation because it's just been Mark and I the past couple of weeks, and we've been able to do that. But everybody's welcome to join us, and there's nothing but benefit there. So, everybody needs medicine, so it'd be very good. Thank you.